Good to go? Okay. All right, thank you for coming to the planning board tonight, Tuesday, August 19th, like 7:10 PM. Motion to open the meeting.
Said motion?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, for the agenda tonight, approval of August 3rd, 2021 meeting minutes. Have a motion?
I'll motion it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 301 Main Street was a vote for a drafted decision. Rebecca, do you want to,
So I drafted the decision based upon the discussion that took place at the last planning board hearing on August 3rd. It is in your packet for your review and your approval.
so it basically states the fact that without the curb cut, that 301 Main Street is going to have to wait until the state DOT and safe passage through, until they get that, they basically, we're not going to grant it.
That's correct.
So that's basically where we sit with that.
Yep.
So I guess a motion to approve. Second, Jim?
Yep, I'll second it.
All right, I guess we're all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Hello, Bob.
How you doing?
Do you want to just grab that mic? All right. So, she'll give you a packet, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
sign this later, all right?
That's all that. Oh, I'm supposed to sit over there?
No, that's all right, you can sit next to me.
Huh?
I didn't know the spatial information.
I don't care.
For the public hearing tonight, continued aquifer protection overlay, special permit, 929, 931 Salem Street, ANFEH LLC, Fadi Isa, pursuant to Groveland zoning bylaw 50-6.2, here an application requesting a new 7250-foot building with a convenience store, auto repair shop, installation and dispensing pumps with canopies and 2 fuelage tanks. The site is located in Industrial Zone 1, Assessors Map 49, Parcel 4. So I guess we'll motion to open the meeting for 929, 931.
I make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you want me to get Peter Ellison with TEC on the phone?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Peter, you're on speakerphone. Are you able to communicate for 929, 931 Salem?
I am.
Okay.
Adam, do you want to take it?
I do.
Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'll try to speak up because I know we've got representatives of TDC on speakerphone. My name is Adam Costa. I'm with the firm of Mead, Tallerman and Costa. I know most of you board members. In this instance, I'm representing ANFA LLC and specifically Fadi Isa, who is behind me. Hal Chuba is also with me today. We opened a public hearing on this application, which is for an Aquifer Protection Overlay District Special Permit back in mid-May of this year. You might recall that this is a project that was originally permitted starting back in 2017. The project received a special permit from the Town Zoning Board of Appeals in 2017. It received site plan approval from your board in 2017. It also received an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. Approximately 2 years later, project came back before your board, back before Conservation Commission for some modifications and adjustments. It received an amended order of conditions. It also received an amended site plan approval. Throughout the process, it was never brought to the attention of the applicant. The applicant never recognized that there was also a need for an Aquifer Protection Overlay District special permit. And so building permit issued, construction commenced on the site,
And at that point, it was brought to the attention of the applicant that that permit was required under your zoning bylaw, had not been applied for, had not been obtained. And so while the building commissioner, building inspector, gave the applicant some limited ability to continue some work on the site, more or less required work to stop for the purpose of application and issuance of an APOD special permit. So we opened the public hearing back in May. To recap what we had done at that time, we had presented to you revised site plans and proposed at that time maybe the most, I hesitate to use the word controversial, but really what sparked most of the discussion back on May 18th was this concept of an above ground versus what was referred to as an underground storage tank for the fuel. And so we had explained to you that what we're proposing is an above ground storage tank, but it's going to be located on the site such that it is below grade. And I know that seems a bit contrary to reason, but we walked through some of the specifics of the Massachusetts regulations as they relate to above ground versus underground storage tanks and how those specific terms are given very specific meanings. We had John Clement present. He's present again tonight to provide some guidance as well under the fire code and the provisions of the Code of Massachusetts regulations that have implemented the International Fire Code. And at that time, the board was generally comfortable, I think, I don't want to speak for board members, generally comfortable with what we presented, but really had two requests. Number one, requested that we submit some additional information to justify all that we presented at that meeting verbally, that these tanks do qualify as above ground storage tanks. And then the second request that board members had was specifically that TEC have the opportunity to review the project and in particular that aspect of the project. And so we produced additional information. We did that during the month of June. That information was then provided to TEC after they provided a scope of services that we approved for the peer review. They conducted their peer review during the month of July. We received a letter, have a copy of it here, dated August 3rd. That letter is 2.5, almost 3 full pages, had a series of 14 comments relating to this proposal. Generally, and I'm going to characterize it, although I know certainly TEC and Peter Ellison can speak for himself, but I thought in reading it that it was a positive review of the project overall, suggested a variety of conditions, none of which we really objected to. We thought that they were appropriate conditions. It did identify 2, maybe 3 areas where there were questions asked by Mr. Ellison. We responded to that. Hal did specifically in further correspondence dated August 11th. That correspondence was 2 pages, and as I just indicated, with respect to the 14 items, I want to say 11 of them were responses simply with the word agree, because we agreed that these were appropriate conditions of approval. And with respect to the other 3 or maybe 4, we provided the additional information that Mr. Ellison had requested. I did see a response from him via email that came through, I think it was on Friday, indicating that he had reviewed that response from Mr. Truba and was comfortable with it and essentially gave the project a clean bill of health. The only other item I want to bring to the attention of the board is that there was an email that was received from the Department of Fire Safety. I want to say it was approximately 2 weeks ago. And that email raised a couple of issues, most notably, and again, I'm going to try to characterize it here as somebody that, is not a fire inspector or engineer, but it raised some concerns or issues as it relates to the citations in Mr. Clement's 14 or 15-page letter that was submitted during the month of June. And specifically indicated that some of those references were to older or outdated versions of the Code of Massachusetts regulations or an FPA. And so I presented and I provided it through your town planner. I think it was on Friday. Provided a copy of just a 1-page response memorandum from John Clement that essentially just clarified that the purpose of that 14 or 15-page memo was really to provide some historical context as to how it has become that above ground and underground storage tanks are differentiated, how they do have different meanings under state and federal law. But he clarified that he acknowledges that there have been revisions and that currently it is 527 CMR 1 that has incorporated the National Fire Code, superseding 527 CMR 9.04, but also verifies that none of the provisions of the current code alter any of the analysis that he provided previously. And he quotes some of those additional or more current code references for clarification. So I think the short version there, and certainly Mr. Clement can speak for himself if board members have questions, but the short version is that the statements that were made in that 14 or 15-page memo before continue to be accurate even under the current codes. Underground storage tanks are treated differently than above-ground storage tanks. The tanks that are proposed for this site are above-ground storage tanks that are stored below grade, and they will function as above-ground storage tanks, and they will have all of the mechanisms required by state and federal law to ensure that they are stable tanks, that they are properly constructed, properly located, they have the proper malfunctioning alarm systems and whatnot, overflow to ensure that there would be no catastrophic damage or harm to the environment. So that's the information that you now have before you. It came in, as I said, rather late. We were hoping that we might come before you and wrap up the process tonight, but having just received some of this information on Thursday or Friday, I communicated with Ms. Oldham on Friday, or maybe it was even yesterday, and said, do you want us to attend the meeting on Tuesday or simply await the drafting of a decision? And she suggested it might make some sense just to appear before you tonight and confirm that you don't have any outstanding questions or concerns. We have our complete applicant consultant team here and happy to answer any questions that the board has. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Pete, do you have anything to add to this? I don't know if you got a good,
In general, I would just add that I think I didn't catch the gentleman's name that just presented, but I think it was a fair summary of my letter, and my overall review is that I am in agreement with the definitions that they provided for this project. Obviously, the above ground storage tank below grade is somewhat of a niche installation or practice that's associated with these gas stations, but after my review of the regulations I could find at the state level and my review of the local zoning bylaw, I'm generally in agreement, and I do have a slew of conditions that I would recommend the board incorporate, that I think are outlined in my letter, but in general, I'm in agreement with everything that was just presented.
so I have questions on the vault, the design of the vault. What's the strength of the vault, the floor, the piping? Do we have a plan?
For the record, my name is Hal Chuber. I am the design engineer. I don't have the full plans. Those plans would have to be submitted through the fire marshal's office to be approved. But the plans will, I think, in the TEC review, that the vault itself will have to be designed to withhold the loading of the backfill and the loading over the driving with the fuel truck on top of the tank. We don't have the full specs yet for we do have the general layout and the vault sizes, including the requirement for containment that I submitted the computations for.
So
But
we saw those.
the actual structural plans, I don't have yet. That will be submitted through the fire marshal's office to be approved.
So is that going to be drawn up by our environmental engineer to make sure that it's constructed?
We'll be not an environmental engineer, will have to be by a structural engineer to make sure it's watertight and it's not, but will have to be reviewed through, it'll be a watertight tank, and also, I believe from TEC recommended approval that you put a condition that they have to be tested. So they'll be tested before, and the results of the test will be submitted to the board and prior to occupancy.
So the meat and potatoes of the tank, Pete, the construction of dissimilar metals, and so I'd like to see a plan and make sure that it's probably reviewed by an environmental engineer. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Just to make sure that the piping part of it is sound. You're also probably going to have some kind of a communication, I don't know if I'm right, John, but out of the vault into the convenience store, like a Vita-Root system. Pretty much, I know fuel. So a Vita-Root system is something to tell Fadi that we're running low and we need to refill the tanks.
Absolutely, that's standard, that's the standard of the industry, you know, so it'll be included in it.
There are a few
But-
conditions that TEC recommended that
Correct.
address this issue. So there are essentially 3 rounds of approval or types of approvals that are required before the tank can proceed. We've got the structural engineer that will actually do the design of the tank. There's a approval process, and this is referenced, I think, in condition 11. There's a state fire marshal approval process required. So in addition to having the structural engineer design it and stamp the plan, and the suggestion from DEC is that we would provide this board with a copy of that plan, which we're happy to do. We then need to submit that stamp plan to the state fire marshal for approval through the state fire marshal's office. And then the further suggestion of TEC, which we don't object to, of course, is that once the tank is installed, in accordance with those stamp plans, that there be testing that occurs to ensure that they actually function the way that they've been designed to function.
Who is gonna actually do the testing, and how many times a year do they do the testing?
Is it biannual? Was it annual?
Yeah. I know when I work for the school system, I know ours is annually, but I mean, that's only not it's not gasoline, it's diesel and everything else, so.
Yeah, but if you look at the, I'm sorry,
Oh.
yeah, if you look at the review from TEC, and you can see that it says it has to be through the fire marshal's office. This
Fire
is,
marshal's
the
office.
fire marshal's office is the authority to issue the permit for the above-ground tanks. So if they don't feel that the above-ground tanks meet the requirements of above-ground tanks, they won't issue the
Oh,
permit.
I understand that, but I'm just saying,
And also, the-
what's the scenario? I mean, are they gonna be annual, quarterly?
they will also set the frequency for the inspection.
Okay.
So, but it will be done by a third party, so
Like
it's not.
NEAT or,
Oh, it'll be done by a third party?
Right,
It
correct.
It won't be
Same
done
as
by,
if-
it won't be done by the fire marshal or?
No, the
Or,
fire department.
or Groveland Fire Department, or?
Don't believe so.
I doubt it, I don't.
Okay.
They'll have to have somebody who's expert in this field to
I
do
would,
the,
I would just like to see those reports submitted to the planning board every time. I mean, just yearly. I mean, not when they have it done. If it's quarterly, that's fine, but at least give us a set of reports every year to see that he's meeting the.
We can put a condition in for that.
Yes. so, yeah.
And that is a proposed condition that
Oh,
TEC had
it
included.
was, all
Right.
right.
And so just to be perfectly clear, there's 2 types of testing that TEC contemplates, and we're agreeable to both. The first is in comment number 10, which is the initial testing of the tank once it's constructed to
Exactly,
ensure that
yeah.
it's watertight.
Yeah.
Once that initial test occurs, well, then you need to adopt an operations and maintenance plan,
Maintenance,
which will have to provide a copy to the
exactly.
board. And then in accordance with that plan, there'll need to be at least annual testing, maybe more frequently if the fire marshal's office requires it.
Yeah.
And those reports would also, a copy would also be provided to the board
That's-
at that time.
That's fine.
Sure.
Yep.
Are you in agreement with that, Pete?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Yes. Do we know if the tank, if the vaults will be cast in place or precast?
Will they be precast or will they be poured in place?
I'm not sure yet, depending on the design of the most likely, I would say they would be cast in place. They're huge
Yeah.
things.
So you pour it in place and.
Yeah.
So the initial tank, I take it as fiberglass, at least double line
Oh,
tank?
yeah, the double
Double
wall,
line.
yeah,
Yeah,
double
yeah.
line. So you have a triple protection. You have a double wall, and then you have a vault that has a capacity of 300% of the tank
Containment area,
capacity.
yeah.
so.
Okay, any other members of the board?
Sounds like they're crossing their Ts and dotting their Is to getting everything in order.
Sean?
Yeah, no, I think the review makes sense, and you stated that you've agreed to all of DEC's conditions, so. The only, separate from the tanks, there was a question about the impervious area in comment 7. Does that affect anything tonight, or is that a process that takes?
No, that's a,
It only affects, if I could through you, Mr. Chair, it only affects the application. So is a trigger under the APOD, that if you exceed the impervious surface, the maximum impervious surface, you require a permit. Now, we require a permit anyway because of the storage tank, which is what brings us before you. So we saw that comment and said, okay, I think it was fair for Mr. Ellison to point it out, but we are before you, we're before you on a special permit, which is what that is an additional trigger for.
Okay, so I think Rebecca will probably end up doing a draft of and at next meeting, we can,
I think we take a motion to.
I'd like to keep it open just because I'd like to have a conversation with the applicant in terms of the actual conditions, and once we actually close the
right,
hearing,
once we
can
draft
have
the
that
actual conditions,
conversation.
next meeting.
If the applicant would allow that.
Yeah, I would think we just keep it open until we get the design of the vault, and then.
We can make that a conditional.
Then we can make a decision on maybe hopefully in the next meeting. And,
So we're comfortable with that. Certainly, we prefer the option of keeping the public hearing open so that if there are questions that Ms. Oldham has or that the board members have, we can be responsive. Just to be clear, however, we're not at a point where we're going to develop the design of the vault during this permitting process. That would be a condition of your approval.
Correct.
And of course, it would be submitted to you after the fact. It would be subject to review by the fire marshal's office, and then you would get a copy of the O&M plan and subsequent inspection reports. Yep.
correct.
Okay.
If, when we approve it, what's the lead time where you start construction?
Do you know, you did reach out to see how quickly they could get the tanks, right?
Who is doing, is it Steve Marquis or whatever, does,
Tank.com.
Tank top?
Tank.com.
Yeah, so,
Comp Tank.
Comtank. Oh, I know Comtank. Yep.
okay.
I don't recall,
about 8 weeks for
we
the
did
lead
reach out, I
time.
want to say, my recollection was that it was 8 to 12 weeks
for the tanks.
lead time for the tanks.
Yeah.
We did reach out about a month ago to get that information.
It's about 5 months out.
All right, so
5 months? 5 months, okay, 5 months.
plenty of time.
Yep.
All right, so we'll make a motion to
Continue to the September 7th meeting.
September 7th until we can iron out all the conditions. And Rebecca will draft the decision and we'll vote on our next meeting.
Appreciate that.
Okay? So,
I second it.
all in
I'm
favor?
sorry, so who made the motion and who seconded?
Brad.
I made the motion to
Oh, okay.
continue to September 7th. We draft up order of conditions and draft up for the next meeting, we can take a vote on it. Bob was a second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and just to be clear, unless the board tells me otherwise, I'm going to tell my client that he doesn't have to pay his entire consultant team to come out to the meeting on the 7th, presuming that we've
No,
addressed
I don't
the-
think he does.
No,
Okay,
that's not gonna be necessary.
okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. Thank you all for accommodating me here. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
I'll be out there soon enough.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pete.
All right. Bye.
Okay, so the next order of business, definitive subdivision, King Meadow Farm, Katy Lane, King Meadow Development, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81T, Town of Groveland Subdivision Rules and Regulations, Article 14 of the Groveland General Bylaws, to hear an application requesting approval of a 9-lot subdivision associated with stormwater management and a land disturbance permit. The site is located in residential R2 zoning district. The proposed subdivision is located on King Street, Groveland, Mass. 01834. Assessors map 26, parcel 13, and map 26, parcel 13F.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. How are you this evening?
Good, how are you?
We have to
Good.
open, we have to motion to
Oh,
open.
I'm sorry.
Make a motion to open the meeting?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Well, again, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for being here. As I told you before, my name is Douglas DeShane from the law firm of Finneran and Nicholson. I'm here representing King Meadow Development LLC. With me this evening, Kevin Cuniff, manager of King Meadow Development. Also, we hope soon our engineer will be joining us. And a couple of of the members of King Meadow Development. But as you know, we're here this evening to continue our discussion of a proposed definitive subdivision known as King Meadow Farm, roadway named Katy Lane. If the board is okay, I'd like to just make a few opening statements. I assume you want to hear from your peer reviewer and things like that, but, so however you want the meeting to go, let me know, but if you want, I can just do my quick opening statement.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I know that since we were last here, when we were last here, the board had presented us with a number of comments and questions, mostly relating to the engineering and design drainage of the system, of the subdivision. And I know that my clients and their engineers have been working diligently with not only your peer review consultant, but Ms. Oldham as well, to work through those issues and concerns. The goal, obviously, was to get the peer review's comment letter down to no unanswered questions, or if there were some not unanswered questions, but if there was still some issues, get those issues to a point where they could be made a condition of the board's decision, and I do believe that we're there. We did have a meeting last week where we went through the peer review and addressed all of the last comments and made final changes to the plan. So I will leave it to your peer reviewer to present that information to you. But again, our goal was to get to that point where, at least from a technical standpoint, the subdivision met your rules and regulations and that we had addressed all of your concerns. I will mention that this, we've been at this a while, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and I know my clients have tried to be responsive. I know early on in the process, the board had concerns about what we were going to do with the additional 9 acres that was called parcel 13G. The board wanted to know what we had in mind for development of that parcel. And while there certainly was potential for some development, ultimately my clients thought it would be best to just integrate that property into the existing 9 lots so that there would be no questions or concerns about future development. And quite frankly, I think that was a good thing for my clients to do, but I did remind them that they were giving up, possible additional lots that could be developed, or a lot that could be developed. But again, their eye was on the prize of getting this subdivision approved and getting the board comfortable. So we've done that. You know that we've also worked with your water department and have agreed to upgrade the water line going through the neighborhood or up to the neighborhood along King Street. That design, we've designed that. It's been approved by the water department. We've applied to your Conservation Commission. So that is going to become a reality for the town. They're going to get an improved water line in that system, which I think will also provide benefits to the neighbors in general in terms of their water. We have, during the course of the technical review, identified 2 additional waivers that we didn't include in our original filing. I'll remind the board that with our original filing, we had 1 waiver, and that was with respect to the road length. As you know, we have asked for a waiver to exceed the 750-foot length, and I will address that in just a moment. But we've also, again, in the course of the technical review, come across 2 additional waivers that we are now seeking. They're on our plans. One of them is with respect to the use of, I don't want to say plastic, but it's what's a technical?
ADS type pipe.
You guys know better than I, the pipe. We've proposed the use of that pipe as opposed to concrete pipes. Quite frankly, I'm dealing in a number of towns that have actually moved to that as a requirement. and we're finding that many peer reviewers and towns are agreeable that the use of that pipe is a better material. It's longer lasting, easier to repair, and just quite frankly, the newer technology. So we are asking the board to consider to allow us to use that pipe. I do not believe there have been any negative comments regarding that requested waiver, and in fact, I think that was part of our discussion with the DPW folks, that
Did Rennie?
Rennie did, the highway superintendent did submit an email that's in your packet relative to the use and had just made a suggestion based upon their original submittal to increase the size of the pipe from what they were originally proposing.
That's all, yeah.
so he was comfortable with the material, but he wanted us to use a slightly larger pipe, which we're happy with. And again, gentlemen, I will tell you that if the town or the board has a significant concern about that, which again, the highway superintendent did not, we can do the concrete pipe. We just feel it's better for long-term viability. So we'd ask you to consider that. The other waiver, as I understand, is relating to a proposed retaining wall. The board's regulations require the use of stone,
Fieldstone, yep.
field stone for that wall, and we certainly understand the purpose and intent behind that. We want them to look like stone walls. We want them to be, attractive to people on the roadway or passing by or through the neighborhood. However, I understand that the particular use that we're proposing a waiver on is not, in fact, something that you're going to see driving on the road or by the road. It actually faces away from, public view, so no one is going to see it. However, on top of that, and probably more importantly, as I understand it, and perhaps if necessary, our engineers will be happy to address it, the blocks that we're proposing to use do actually have a surface on them. They're not just an ugly concrete block, but they're a faced block. But structurally, they're superior for our proposed use over a stone wall. Structurally, it's more durable, and it will last far longer. And it's very unlikely that for many, many years, if not decades to come, this wall is not going to require any maintenance or reconstruction, and will serve its purpose. Stone walls are also a very viable material, but as I understand it, they're not as long-lasting, and, they don't hold back as well as it could. So
How tall is the wall?
Varies anywhere from
The highest point?
6 feet.
So,
So it's a shade,
Shade type wall.
same wall as, okay.
yeah, so again,
Yeah.
we think that, and while we appreciate the efforts to make these walls aesthetically pleasing when they are in the public's view, I think it's worth, or we would ask you to consider whether it's worth going to a better material that's going to be better and long-lasting in light of the fact that no one is going to see it. So that is our second waiver. Our third waiver, as you know, and this was the only original waiver we had, was on the road length. And I believe at least one member had previously asked, well, why would we waive from our regulations? Well, my answer to that would be that both state law as well as your local subdivision regulations do in fact allow for waivers. It is recognized that there are times that certain waivers are justified, but most importantly, when you're seeking a waiver, you have to show that the purpose and intent of the underlying regulation from which you're asking for a waiver can actually be satisfied with your waiver. So for instance, we believe that the structural requirements of those walls and the aesthetic requirements can be met because A, no one can see it, and B, what we're proposing is stronger. With respect to the roadway, we believe we can also show why that waiver is justified and why, in granting it, that the purpose and intent of the 750-foot limitation can actually be satisfied. To that end, I think we can agree that the reason that towns have dead-end road length limitations is first and foremost with public health and safety concerns, right? We don't want roads, dead-end roads that are so long that, there's potential public health and safety concerns, if there's a blockage in the road, or, can emergency fire trucks get there? Is it too long? In my experience, the basis of those restrictions have been first and foremost public health and safety concerns. You don't want long dead ends that, could create problems. Also, there is a consideration of maintenance of those roadways, right? It's difficult to maintain a extremely long one-way but a dead-end street. So, I know towns restrict the length so as to make sure the maintenance of the roadways is not going to be impaired by its length. With respect to the public health and safety of the waiver we've asked for, I'll remind the board that we are actually seeking as an extension, depending on how you want to measure, but at the most, it's 140 feet, and that's if we measure to the farthest end of the cul-de-sac, and we measure the differential, it's 140 feet. If you measure to the center line of the roads, or center line of the cul-de-sac as we've presented on our plans, we're actually exceeding the 750 feet by only 75 feet. So in either event, how you measure it, we're not asking for a significant extension. And we have tried to address the public health and safety concerns. First of all, as some of you may know, Massachusetts does not have a state fire safety code, but rather it has adopted the National Fire Safety Code. National Fire Safety Code limits the length of dead-end roads in terms of safety. However, I know I was surprised, but they will say that National Fire Standards, which Massachusetts has adopted, allows up to 100 homes on a dead-end street. So they really go out there. We're looking for 9. However, we have also submitted comment requests to your fire department, your police department, your Department of Public Works, asking for their commentary on our waiver, what they feel. And we did receive response from the fire department, who has indicated that they are not concerned with the requested waiver, as the additional roadway is insignificant, and that they don't see that having a negative impact on their ability to provide public safety, whether it's fire or ambulance. The police department didn't give us a specific comment, and nor did the DPW director, although we did speak directly with him, and he did indicate to some of the members of the team here that he didn't have a concern with the added length in terms of maintenance of the road, but he did not, unfortunately, provide us a written comment to give to you. However, I will remind the board that all of the departments in your town are given an opportunity to comment on projects, as they were with this one, and to comment on waivers, and that we have all concluded or have all considered that if a board did not have a comment or did not raise an issue, that was paramount to the fact that they didn't feel there was an issue worth raising. So I would submit to the board that the police and the DPW's director's decision not to provide a comment that there was an issue with the waiver is in essence an acquiescence that they didn't see it as a problem and therefore didn't comment. And we see that with a lot of boards when they review, subdivisions. Quite frankly, if they don't have a comment or a problem, they don't comment, or maybe you'll get a no comment. But in our case, we did get an express comment from the fire department. We did not get comments from police or DPW, but again, I believe we can agree that that is an indication that they did not have an issue. So I think that our requested waiver is small enough in length that we are not derogating from the purpose and intent of your 750 feet, which is fire, public health and safety, and maintenance concerns. I also did a little digging in your public records, and I see that the board has, over the last number of years, been asked for this waiver at least 5 times. Interestingly enough, it seems like every time they measured it a different way. First one measured it to the middle, the next one measured it to the end. One, I think they actually measured it to the beginning of the cul-de-sac. But in any event, irregardless of how it was measured, they did ask for waivers on this, and the board has, I presume, because they were able to show that they weren't affecting public health and safety, the board has actually granted this waiver in a number of cases. As I said, I think 4 or 5, at least during the period that I went back. I didn't want to dig back too deep, takes too much time. But I think, gentlemen, in looking at the history, how this board has analyzed waivers in the past, and in light of the comments we have and the non-comments we have, that my clients have met the burden of showing that the waiver request is not unreasonable, and it's not, it would not derogate from the purpose and intent of your 750-foot limit. So those are our 3 waivers, gentlemen. We're asking you to consider them, and certainly as part of your decision. And I think at this point, you've listened to me long enough. Perhaps it would be best now that either your peer reviewer or ours can give you a report on.
I think we'll give Dave a chance to, on the review. But I have a question. What are the 5 roads that you came up with?
Oh, boy. If
No, Billis.
I have the list in here, I'll dig it out. I can dig, gentlemen, I can list the, do you guys know them off the top of your head?
I know Billis for a fact. I didn't.
It was 3, I remember.
Mr. Chairman, I'll dig it out. I have the list in this pile.
Okay.
But in the meanwhile, we know, could you guys just give me the road names?
Phyllis Way.
Phyllis Way?
Phyllis.
Phyllis Way?
We
Is
know
that-
Billis, yeah.
That one you had?
Graham, that's Graham.
Graham.
Graham?
Yes,
Okay.
I think Estes.
Did you have one? I know,
I'm not sure if it was Estes or not.
Yeah, Estes, I think, is also
Yep.
longer than the 750 feet.
so that's
That-
3. I will,
Estes after the 750 road length changed?
No.
That's what I thought, yeah. Estes goes way back.
Maybe not
early
Estes, but
2000.
Graham.
I'll pull the list out.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to
Maybe
know.
if you
I'd
want to
like to
let your
know.
peer reviewer, I'll take a few minutes to do that for you. Did you want to,
Yeah, I'd like to see TEC.
Kevin, why don't you stay, where do you go, maybe let Thad?
Hey, if you want to go over there and grab a mic, that's fine.
You want to sit there?
Or if you want to sit there, that's fine.
Good evening, members of the board. David Nader from TEC. I'm here to present the letter that I issued regarding the submission dated August 2nd. So the applicant has addressed the majority of the comments with this latest submittal, including comment 20 in providing corrected drainage calculations. They updated their HydroCAD and the calculations kind of showing that the peak flows don't increase in the design points that they had. There are a few outstanding comments still, which include comment 1 in providing an updated operations and maintenance plan, and comment 39, which is providing an updated stamp to the revised plans, those stamps that they or the plans that were stamped at a previous date. Then there were a few comments which TEC actually defers to the planning board to either interpret the bylaws or to determine if the applicant's proposed conditions are acceptable to you. These include comment 32, if the proposed retaining walls are acceptable with a waiver. Comment 34, if the proposed wooden stockade fencing is acceptable. And then comment 36, if the proposed fencing around the ponds are acceptable. That's a quick synopsis of them. Like I said, most of the comments were addressed, or the previous comments were addressed, and I'm happy to open up to any questions that you may have regarding this submission.
On that stone wall, the shade?
Yes.
Where is it and what are they holding up?
So there are a couple, but I believe the main one is on the, what would it be, the southern end of the roadway. It's basically retaining the road from a pond is the major one.
Yeah,
There's a
okay.
couple, yeah, there's a couple other shorter ones, but
Does it have to be, because it's over 6 feet, are we gonna have to fence it?
I believe just around ponds are supposed to be fenced anyways, but yes, anything
Code is over
over,
4, I believe, right?
yeah. Well, anything over 4 needs to be stamped by a registered engineer. but
Right.
Yes, yep.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I'll get back to, I have my list. We appreciate the work that your peer reviewer has done for us, and he did mention that there were 2 questions that were unanswered. They were the first 2. One was relating to getting getting the stamps updated on the plans. And what was the first one? I'm sorry.
Providing an updated operations and maintenance. plan.
Provided an updated operation and maintenance plan. Certainly, we're very amenable to both of those, but would ask whether those might be something the board would make as a condition, because I assume that if this project is approved, we're required to provide a last set of finalized, completed plans as part of the decision. That's typical with subdivision things. So we would certainly provide that updated plan reflecting all of the changes with the correct stamps as part of a condition, if you'd like. And also the operation and maintenance, that's something too that we can just produce, at the board's request. I do know that we had a lot of discussions with the highway department or the superintendent regarding the proposed fencing around the cul-de-sac and around the ponds. And we talked at length with Rebecca about those as well. And it was suggested to us that what we should put, the highway superintendent had, if I'm remembering this correctly, and you can tell me if I'm not, I know we were at the same meeting. He said that he was fine with the proposed fences, but he required a specific height. Wasn't that the resolution to that question?
Right, well, the cul-de-sac was gonna have a wooden guardrail.
Guardrail,
Wooden
The other
guardrail.
pond was gonna have a black chain link fence.
Yeah, and he dictated, he was okay with those, but he dictated the height of both of those, and we've agreed to that.
So the ponds have to be mini-link?
They need to be what,
Are
excuse
they
me?
standard chain link or is it mini-link fence? Does it matter, Dave?
I believe it just has to be accepted by you. I don't know off the top of my head if it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, I'm sorry.
The only left-out area was the size of the gate. That was up for discussion, and whatever it is, whatever he
And the
wants. is-
location of the gate.
In the location.
Yeah.
Whatever he wants, that's where we go.
Okay.
So you can get a machine down in there to clean it up.
Right, right. To do
Yeah,
Whatever
right.
maintenance is
Yep.
required, he can get it in the truck.
And the piping, because of the calcium chloride, I mean.
Yeah, I would absolutely.
The concrete fail,
I
will fail.
have no
and-
issues about changing the piping at all, so.
And Dave, you're on board with the piping?
Piping?
Yeah, as long as they follow manufacturer specifications and have the
And
correct cover.
sand
over
and,
them.
yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
That's longer sections too, so. it's,
Yeah, absolutely. Better runs, everything. Better.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
So just to clarify, you're asking for the board to grant a conditional approval without having the review of the plan and finalize that you have in fact addressed any outstanding comments?
Well, I thought with the exception of having to put the new stamps on the plan, that our plan had been reviewed and there were no outstanding issues on the plan.
So the comments that David had provided don't need to be reviewed?
Well, but the comments that he provided were that we needed to, have the stamps match.
Correct.
And again, what was I'm sorry.
Well, the first one was to just provide the updated O&M plan.
Yeah, an O&M plan, which is not,
Operating maintenance.
that's a manual, which we have, right? It just needs to be updated to,
You referenced that you have updated it, you just
Yeah.
didn't provide it.
oh, okay. So, yeah. I mean,
Something we'd wanna
those aren't outrageous conditions, just says that,
I just wanted to clarify for the board.
I'm sorry, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm used to a lot of times, by the time we get to the end of a peer review, there's always a couple things where the peer reviewer says, I would suggest you make this a condition, that they provide you the clean O&M plan, or that they get the stamps on the plan, rather than pushing things off for a month. And I mean, and I apologize for not knowing, but typically when I see a subdivision approval, there's always a condition that we provide updated final stamped plans for review by the board for signature at some point anyway. So, obviously that final set of plans that we give you for review and a signature would have to have updated stamps.
And you don't see any reason why, I'm sorry, that's fine. But changing from fieldstone to interlock and block,
I defer to you on that decision, I just report on what the bylaws say.
So we,
I know my decision on that. but
well, we,
that's what I think.
we see the plan too over there. I'd like to see where it is, the location.
Yeah, but,
Was it the,
Oh, yeah,
No,
well, we see a board up there, so we
I see a
also,
board, he's got some,
yeah.
No, yeah, you're good there.
What's the difference between the block and the stone?
much better.
The block is.
block is
Oh,
good
yeah.
for holding back material. The
Yeah.
fieldstone is usually on an entryway of subdivision. If the fieldstone's 6 feet high, it could potentially crumble after.
The block is more secure.
It's manufactured.
Yeah.
Location of the wall is set out on the side of the block.
Hold on.
Well, you're gonna have, I would, yeah,
Go over there in that corner, whatever, go in that corner.
and at least turn it
There you go,
so,
so they can,
so they can see it as well.
a little bit more to us, so, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we can't see that and they won't let us see the map.
I thought these were here for the public.
Can we put the board over there, Phil?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there was some extra maps on the table, we were just looking at them and he grabbed them out of our hand.
Well,
I never saw an engineer do anything like that before.
Can we release?
Yeah.
The map?
We don't need. Thank you.
So basically, this is what
Yeah.
they're gonna review right now.
Kevin,
But they're extra copies. Can we
Give 'em
just
one.
hold one?
Kevin, give him,
You wanna, please?
no, we'll give it a minute. Give him public information.
Thank you, sir.
We need one also.
The location of the wall is two locations. One is
Childish.
on the southerly side of
That's
the.
it.
We don't need,
We-
we
no
don't need
comment,
any comments
please.
like that,
Yeah,
okay?
please.
Else, you guys are out, okay? Go ahead.
So the location of the wall is on the southerly side of the right-of-way, near this detention pond right here. It's going to go from basically this property line to this easement line here. And that's going to be facing, the face of the wall is on the southerly side, so you see it from the south, not from the roadway. You won't see it from the roadway at all as you drive by. And the other wall is located in this area right here, at the end of the cul-de-sac on the easterly side of the cul-de-sac is a small wall in length. I think it's about 45 feet long. And that's about 2.5 to 3 feet high. And it's maximum, it tapers on either end down to 0. And that's to hold up the soil, so it can stay out of the 25-foot no disturb zone for the conservation area. Again, that's facing to the east, so it'd be at grade along the roadway itself. So you won't see that either. But it will have the textured face on it. I think you've probably seen these walls. I think the last project you had, Fadi's, was right on the town line next to Pub 97. Here's a wall there.
Baldini has one, I got one.
Yep. And there's one being built right now on the corner of Salem and School.
Right, that's Baldini.
Being built, yeah. So those
Yep.
those are the type of wall we're looking at as building. It's very structurally sound, and that's why we want to use that as opposed to the stone and mortar. So those are the two locations. And they're defined on the plans as well. If you look at the plans, they're called out with the length and the height and all that. So, and there's a detail on one of the sheets. I forget which one. 12, 11, something like that.
The circle up there, that's not a wall. On the top, second lot in from the left.
This?
Yeah.
No, this is the buffer zone. This is the wetlands. 25-foot no disturb, 75-foot no build, and 100-foot buffer. All those white lines are the buffer zones to the wetlands. Just to show you respect with the relationship to the proposed lots.
And the last time we walked, they were gonna mark the trees. There's a no-cut zone.
I think we can do that prior to construction, yeah. I don't think it's been marked yet.
We just talked about that amongst us, about marking those trees.
Okay.
So you guys could take a peek at it.
Yes.
Yeah, the conservation will also want the limit of work, which will be the hay bale, erosion control, which will be the limit of tree removal as well.
And from when we walked it, it looks like there's a pretty heavy buffer around the whole subdivision, and that looks like it's probably gonna stay, except for where the roadway was
Yeah, I think
gonna,
this, for the most part-
three-quarters of the way down, if I remember correctly. And there was a bunch of trees kind of in the middle. Those are
Like an
gonna have to
island,
go.
yeah, little
Yeah,
group.
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's right in here. Which actually is where the roadway's going through those trees. So
Exactly, so those have to go, but
But we are planting trees every 50 feet, and there'll be some other landscaping on the lots themselves, so.
Best thing we ever did was walk the site.
Right, it gives a better perspective what's going on.
Determination on the site.
I wouldn't say anything now.
So do we have so what are we putting in, if needed, 2 trees every lot? We haven't talked about that. Rebecca, do we have
No,
a?
I think that's all on the drawing.
Yeah,
We put the street trees on the drawing.
we put all the street trees
Yeah.
meeting your regulation are on there.
Okay. All right. Any comments from the board? Dan? Bob? Mr. Danforth, I was gonna say, do you have-
Not right now, no. They've met everything, and TEC is,
On board?
the 3 comments, the 3 proposals they made today, do you have any issues without, I know, studying them, but?
No issues. I mean, a lot of them are just on you to decide what is allowable and what isn't.
The plan that we're looking at, is that the 750, or is that the,
That's the proposed plan that we filed.
750.
that's the 750?
No.
No,
That's the big one.
roughly.
That's a big one.
825.
825.
825 to the center of the cul-de-sac.
To the center of the, okay. So to the end of the cul-de-sac, where the road basically ends at the longest part, what are we talking?
It's about another,
Hold on, I have those numbers. We just went over them.
You said 17 feet.
145, I
No,
guess.
140 to the end, 75 to the center.
141.
It's 825 to the center, and then to the end, so, yeah, right away.
Do we have a plan of the 750?
Yes, we had submitted that some number of weeks ago.
Saw that, is there a board? No.
Want to show them that one?
Yeah. So this shows the 750 superimposed over.
Oh, beautiful, thank you.
750 is on the right.
Okay.
We had previously presented you the
We saw
750
that out.
standalone. Yeah.
So with the 750, I'll ask you this. Is it possible to get that last lot in?
No.
Even with the shared,
Lot plan, we have a small version of.
so Bob, even with the shared driveway?
I'm not sure.
So let me ask you this. It's just a question. We implemented the shared driveway. Does it work for that 750, Rebecca?
You'd still need the
Or
same
Dave?
frontage though, right?
You
Excuse me?
need the roadway to create.
You would still need the same frontage.
Correct.
We need the 150.
So you'd still need the same frontage, whether you did a shared driveway or you didn't.
Now, shared driveway doesn't allow us to build the shorter road.
Okay.
Do they have a hammerhead?
Works on,
Shared driveway, they just put in at the last.
no, like,
Still need the same frontage, don't they?
But they don't have a hammerhead
No,
law.
no.
we
They don't allow
should be
it.
able to do it with a
Don't allow it.
crossover culvert and thing.
They used to.
So,
Have enough room for-
oh, okay, I was let the question. Any board member have any other questions for the applicants or TEC?
Mr. Chairman, one last piece of information. I pulled up the list. Can you get that back for me? I have the 4 names for you.
Oh, good, okay.
It's Billis Way, Graham Way, Rumble Fairways, and Homestead Lane.
What's the last one?
Homestead.
Homestead.
Oh, okay.
And do we have the numbers? Right, the numbers are on there too, right? Oh,
Yeah, what's the numbers, Mike?
819 for Billis, and I don't know how exactly they measured 819. Graham Way is 927. The Fairways is 873, and Homestead Lane is 799.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, any questions for TEC or the applicant or Doug, the attorney? Anybody? Jim?
Okay for now,
I
like I
think
said.
they've answered all questions.
I do, so at this time, we'll open it up for the public to comment.
You want us to?
Probably, yeah. Thank you. So if you're going to come up, we would need your name, address.
Our group submitted a bunch of questions to, which you have.
Yep, they're in their packet.
Oh, okay.
If you'd like to read them, please come up.
Sure. Some of the neighbors couldn't be here because they're working 24 hours.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Paul Kinch. I'm at 118 King Street.
Thank you.
I'm on a butter. First question, these are the ones that were submitted. The first one is, why would the developers feel it necessary and request a waiver for a road extension if it can build a proposed 8-housing development following the bylaw at 750 feet? Extending it is very expensive with just one house. What is the future planned build-out, which the developers have still not answered or submitted, which is required? Stating if they do, they will follow the bylaws. It is not an answer and should not be accepted. Are they planning on building into the Fiore property at 104 King Street, the land where they have previously stated they propose building a under review and enforcement with the DEP for destroying and covering wetlands? That's the first question.
Who wants to answer that?
Jim,
Doug?
through you, sir, I'm happy to answer them. Why did my clients feel it was necessary to propose a development that required a waiver? Well, because, as I explained to you earlier, the law does allow for waivers. we felt that this waiver would allow this project to be economically viable with the ninth lot, given the fact that we are expending over $300,000 in upgrading that water line. And quite frankly, we passed and pretty much eliminated the possibility of building any further on that additional 9 acres. So I think my clients have given quite a bit in return for seeking the waiver. And as I explained earlier tonight, the waiver is both justified and meets the purpose and intent by providing public health and safety. As far as our future development build-out, we're not proposing any. We have provided the board and the town a complete picture of what we want to do with this property. It's right there. We're not going to do something different. And as far as development onto 104, that is not on the table here. We have not asked the board to consider that. But quite frankly, if you look at this plan, how would you ever extend that roadway over into 104? You'll have to go through a wetland, you'll have to eliminate a house, and there's no way to make a through street. So we'd be in here asking for a waiver to, so that's not even on the table. We have told you exactly what we propose to do with this property, and as the way it's been designed, I think they've made it clear that there's no possibility of additional development on this property in any way. It's that simple.
Drainage easement at the end that butts up against the 104 King Street, that won't be used in the future for entry into the 104 King Street
You
property.
can't,
It's a
you
drainage
can't extend that road.
You can't extend that.
Once it's done, it's not going to be like a Rocky Woods
Yes,
or an Evergreen
that's-
Lane. That's not going to happen.
Yes, that's.
And it is
that will
just.
So as
be
far as a
drainage easement to
waiver-
the town of Groveland.
So as
So you
far as a
can't-
waiver, if it's a betterment to the town, then the board has a right to grant the waiver, and we've done it in the past. And so if they can prove it's a betterment to the town, then we can offer a waiver.
So there's just an additional house that goes in with the extended road. It seems to me that from a business case perspective, that's pretty expensive for one house. And I was just
It's not
you know,
your
curious
issue to
why that
bring
had
up
to
a
happen.
business expense
bus-
to a developer. I mean, maybe it's gonna cost, it's gonna pay for the piping for the road or whatever
We
it
can't
is.
answer that.
So
and
we can't answer that.
Well, yeah,
So,
I understand,
okay.
but I'm just saying, on the face of it, the business case for one more house with an additional roadage doesn't seem to be economic. Anyhow,
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer that question through you. That was the analysis. As we mentioned earlier, we're really only adding another 75 feet or 85 feet of road. And while roadways are expensive to build, that little addition is not so much that we're not going to be able to make a profit on that ninth home. But as I said earlier, the reason that ninth home becomes so important is because my clients are going to have to come up with $300,000 for the water line, and they forwent, I believe, a possible lot on that other 9 acres. That's gone.
but this is not a quid pro quo, and that's the cost of doing business, cost of development.
Mr. Chairman, I was asked, on what basis did my clients feel that going after the ninth lot made economic sense? And that's what I
I think
explained.
he answered the question.
We could have
Yes,
certainly
answer
built,
the
we
question.
could have certainly built
We
that
cannot-
nine.
We cannot comment on it, why he's extending the road, nothing. That's up to him. That's his money, not ours, so.
Number 2,
Sure.
the easement is still labeled as paved drive on the proposed development plans that we've seen. It needs to be labeled easement. That's on book 88074, page 10. Are
Chairman?
plans still in flux? Are they changing?
That would be a question I'd give to Dave.
Mr. Chair, if I may say, I have communicated with one of the abutters concerning the labeling of that particular easement and referencing the book and the page as we had asked at a prior meeting. At the meeting that we had with the engineer and the applicant, they confirmed that they would be addressing that And as I mentioned earlier, without having the updated plans, I don't have clarification that they have been actually addressed. However, I can certainly add that as a
As a
conditional
condition.
of approval prior to endorsement of plan to verify, in fact, that it's labeled as an easement referencing the book and the page, if that's what the planning board would like to see.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what we have agreed to. It's going to be labeled easement, book and page, as Mr. Kinch has suggested.
Okay.
Number 3. On the 3-foot and 6-foot retaining wall, there are fences. Is there one on the 7-foot retaining wall?
6-foot retaining wall.
There's a 3 and a 6 and a 7.
We show fences on the walls, yes.
All
And all the
walls
walls
have
have wall
fencing. That's
fence.
required by law and your DPW.
Is it not shown in the plan?
It was discussed,
It was
Already
discussed.
it was
here.
discussed at
Yep.
Okay.
It's not in the TDC report.
I believe, did we talk,
The latest TDC report says that the 7-foot retaining wall does not have a fence, needs to be discussed.
I think we just discussed it here, that we have to do it
we
because
it's the
by law,
code.
and Rennie said that it has to be so much, a certain height also.
Okay. Number 4, I think it may have been discussed tonight. Sorry if I didn't hear it. Has the updated O&M been provided?
They are gonna provide.
They are going to provide it, correct, that was,
All right, number 5. Has the DPW addressed the proposed development and confirmed there is adequate access considering the width, slope, and pool grading?
roads were built to standard of Massachusetts regs. And the fire department will comment.
I
Am I
believe
right?
he's referencing specifically the detention pond that's located in the back of the lot. There was a comment made by TEC relative to the grades and accessing the detention pond for maintenance reasons. That was shared with the highway superintendent, who has stated that there was,
Drive-through gate.
that he was able to access. He just wanted to confirm the gate and also wanted to confirm the placement of the gate and the size of the opening so that his equipment could get in there.
If there's a problem with the pond.
Exactly.
Number 6, we talked a bit about this, not me, but the developers. Why would the proposed development have PVC piping for drainage? The frost line is 4 feet. PVC would have a possibility of cracking. Why do these developers not want to follow the rulings put in place for the safety of the town? Will the developers come and fix any problems at their expense if things go wrong?
So,
subsequent?
I can speak to this.
Go ahead.
So the piping that they propose, so concrete piping was a thing of the past. Okay, we know this for a fact. And the problem now with the concrete piping, they're smaller sections. They actually fail probably within 12 years, the shelf life of maybe 14 or 15. I don't make them, so I can't, I'm not an engineer. But the calcium chloride that they produce on the road right now further deteriorates them much faster. So the pipe that they're proposing is used basically everywhere. And when they do it correctly, what they'll do is they'll put it into sand, they'll pitch it, there'll be no problems with that pipe. So that'll last a lifetime. We'll be gone by the time anything has to be done with that pipe. And it will be installed, I can guarantee, correctly.
Okay. Thank you. Who is responsible for maintaining the pond? We would like the DPW road commissioner's comments on the proposed development.
If it's on town property, the town will
Town
maintain it.
Only until and only if the roadway is accepted and goes through the proper
Authority.
process
Right.
and through town meeting and the town votes to accept the road as a
Correct.
public road.
After it's built.
Yep.
Okay, I think those are the questions that were put forward.
Okay, thank you. I hope we answered them, and I hope they answered them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Do you want me to speak in the microphone, or?
It'll pick it up.
It's right there, in front,
Okay.
it's already right there in front.
Oh, okay. All right,
We
thank
need
you.
your name and address, please.
Sure. Attorney Paul Magliochetti with offices in Haverhill, Mass. I'm here this evening on behalf of Robin Wright
She resides at 102 King Street. I believe she's been attending a lot of these meetings. She asked me to be here this evening. I've been following along through her notes. We all know that there are some issues with regard to the easement between her and Mr. Fiore. So I'd just like to address a couple of her concerns. One of them is I was surprised to hear that they're not going to build in the back. I think that's a good thing. Are they willing to label all that property in the back as non-buildable?
I don't think, they cannot access it after the fact, after that road is constructed.
From this roadway?
That
But are
is
they willing to put on the plan that all that land's not buildable? That's my question.
Doug? I think that's for
There is
the
a
application.
condition gonna be put on it, and it's whatever the, and whatever
So
the board.
there's, I think there's two issues to decipher here. One is are you asking on further development on 104, or are you asking about those two back lots with frontage on Center and King?
The further development on 104.
So the one that we have listed for those two back lots, there will be a restriction, a deed restriction that does not allow for further development, and those are the ones that have frontage on Center and King. He's talking about the farm in the back that's currently under 61A and does not have the ability to be built on at the current time.
Correct.
Well, it could be offered for sale, someone could buy it, pay the 61A fees. But, so when we, can we say,
Put 3 or
right,
4 landowners together on the other side of town.
Yeah.
And you can access it, there's nothing, they would have to
Nothing
come
we can
in
do about that.
and make a proposal.
no, I understand that, but they're saying they've taken it off the table. They can go ahead and label that right now as not buildable,
I don't think,
because they said that they're not going to do it. So I'm just saying, are they willing to do that right now, is to
I
label
said they're
as
not gonna do it, but, I mean, that would go, yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah.
With all due respect, that 104 property is not part of the application before you. I have told you my client's intentions with respect to the property that's on here, and they have no intentions of extending this subdivision.
Can I ask a question? Does King Meadow Farm LLC own 104 King Street,
They
or do
do
they
not.
only own 106 King Street?
That's all the property they own.
Okay, just a matter of clarification.
Okay.
But do any of the principals of King Meadow Development LLC own 104 King Street?
Yes, as we're all aware.
Okay.
Okay, so they're not willing to label that as non-developable, okay.
Well,
We
perhaps your
can't-
client would be willing to label all of her property as non-developable. We could discuss it.
You want to make that deal right now?
So the next comment, please.
Yes.
Well, he raised the issue, not me. We're willing to discuss it publicly right now if he wants to.
No.
No.
You shouldn't have offered then.
Okay. Let's stick
The
to
other, so the other question I have is, she's concerned about her privacy on the land and some of the issues that she's had with the people accessing the farm. So she would like to see a fence along that line that borders the easement. Do you want me to, I don't know if you can.
Can you show me
Yeah.
on the map, please?
That was discussed at one point in time as well, if you remember, Mr. Chairman. There is a wetland there, so the ability to actually
Access
put
to
a
the
fence in the
wetland.
wetland was an issue. I know we had talked about whether or not there should be any conservation restrictions, and after the site walk, we had discussed how in a wetland, you're typically not allowed to build anyway, and there would be conservation markers that would be placed at the edge of the wetland that would state specifically that you could not cut, remove, or build in that
Right,
particular
exactly.
area. So we had actually started to say, okay, well, maybe we wouldn't say anything there because there'd be a conservation restriction through the Conservation Commission. However, what about in the beginning of the lot where there's access? And at the site walk, I believe we had noted that there was a significant amount of vegetation, and there was also a concern about limiting the site distance from the actual Katy Lane onto King Street, and whether or not putting a fence there would cause an additional concern, and therefore it was no longer discussed because of the fact that the vegetation did provide a buffer, and they did not believe at the time that that was the case. So that is just a synopsis of what we had originally discussed, but I'm sure the board can address that further towards your comments.
When we did the site walk,
It was heavily vegetated.
there's a
You
lot of
can't,
vegetation, tree line and everything, and Katy Lane did say that there's gonna be a no-cut zone right down through there, so, and there would be no trees cut, so I don't see any reason why there's gonna be a fence line down there when
If you can't put a fence
vegetation's-
line down in the
Exactly.
wetlands anyways.
So,
Okay. And.
Doug?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just to follow up with additional information to the board with respect to that request. And we have discussed this at length, and we did show the board at the site walk that we did not intend to cut those trees, but it's been brought to my attention that that the owner of that property has actually begun to cut the trees between the easement and our property line, so that there's actually active cutting going on along here, where she's taking down the natural buffer that exists today on her property and asking us to put up a fence on ours. I just don't understand it.
Does the landscape plan show the conservation markers for that particular side of it, or does it only show it on the other side?
If it's in the buffer zone, it shows.
I think
It shows in the buffer, yeah.
And that's on, if you could just recall what
Have it.
page that is for me?
These are the conservation markers.
So they're the plaques that we've been using since like 2004.
And this is the finished tree line.
Okay, you want to see it, Rebecca?
Just what page is that on?
E5A.
And that's currently also before the Conservation Commission for an NOI, is that correct?
Yes?
Yes.
And have they issued their order of conditions on that property yet?
No, they were waiting for us.
They
to
were
finalize
waiting
it.
for us to finish with the planning board in case there were any changes to the plan. But otherwise, they're satisfied with our submission. They're ready to issue pending finalization with this board.
It's all yours, Paul.
Okay, thank you. One of the other concerns that she has is, and I don't know if this has been discussed or addressed, but are they going to use that easement while they're doing the construction? Or are they just going to stop building the road and then access all
No,
the
submitted
property?
as a, what do you mean to use the easement? There's no construction easement if that's,
No.
Attached.
There's an
Doesn't
easement.
connect.
I understand that.
No, sir, we're not proposing to use it in any way, shape, or form.
That's
So
what, that's all. I just wanted that on the
The decision will
record.
state that specifically as well. The decision will specifically state that they must, prior to receiving a building permit, have a constructed roadway. If they do not have a constructed roadway to the standards suitable for emergency access, they cannot receive a building permit for each individual lot. So they would only be doing themselves a disservice if they ever tried to access the site other than through.
But while they're doing the roadway, are there going to be any trucks or vehicles on that easement area? That's what she's concerned with.
no.
They have done that in the past.
So any construction associated with this particular development will be through their frontage on their property.
On their property and on
And will
that
have
site.
a condition of such, and will also have, in addition to that, a construction monitor. The construction monitor will go out to the site to observe the observations per the subdivision rules and regulations. They will also be out at the site every stormwater event of greater than a half an inch, but and no less than weekly. Those reports will then be sent to the planning board for review to make sure that they are in compliance in terms of their erosion control, and again, also meeting the conditions of the approved decision. So we can certainly make sure that that's explicitly stated, that the access to the site must be from the site itself and not from any other location.
Thank you very much. And last, she objects to the additional length in the roadway and the additional lot. She's directly impacted by what goes on back there with the farm, and with all these houses, there's going to be an impact on her privacy and her use and enjoyment of her home. So even though one house lot doesn't seem like it'll have much of an impact, every little bit is going to impact her. There's already significant issues there. And I don't think any of the issues are going to go away anytime soon. So
What are the significant issues?
You wonder if this is going to be the tipping point.
Of what?
I don't follow you.
Well, there's-
Define
there-
a suff-
there are a lot of issues with the use of the easement.
But they're not going to use the easement.
No, I understand that, but there's traffic coming and going on the easement. You're adding additional traffic now through this cul-de-sac.
Well, that's
So
not our,
everyone-
that's not their fault. I mean, she granted the easement to the
No,
farm,
no,
so.
no, I'm not saying that. What I'm
Yes.
saying is that there's additional traffic being created by these houses.
Mhm.
So every time you add a house, it's again impacting the number of vehicles that are going to be using the roadway. I'm just trying to say that as far as extending the road and adding that additional house lot, it will have a direct impact on her as an abutter.
What, 2, 3 times a day? Not, it's not gonna, that's not a very,
So
substantial
if you could-
impact to,
If you could show us what the direct impact was if they add that, I'm curious now, on that lot in the far right corner.
Well,
how
you'd have to
would
do a
I-
traffic study to do that. I'm not a traffic engineer. So they're talking about traffic counts is what you're talking about.
yes.
I was gonna say, some of the earlier peer review letters, there was a traffic, peer review to their traffic analysis, so.
With the additional lot?
Yes. Yeah, from the beginning.
Yeah, okay, all right.
But I'm just trying to understand how that impacts her when it's down in the right-hand corner.
No, because they got to get in the cul-de-sac.
Her property isn't part of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
So,
They have to get here. Up here, when they're coming and going.
Yeah, but if there's a Form A lot on King Street, it would still impact her.
You're correct.
Okay,
And we-
so that's all it is, so
Well,
that's all,
You're correct.
you know,
This isn't
so.
a Form A lot. You're giving a waiver to add the lot. That's the difference.
we
Well, no,
use King,
it's-
Street, Bob, it's all right, but
That's
we
the
use
difference.
King Street all the time, and it's a
Yes.
heavily traveled road twice a
Yes.
day. During the, during the morning and the
9 and
afternoon.
5.
Yeah, correct.
And the buses use it for Pentucket. and-
Absolutely.
So the point is how is she supposed to know if the person coming down the road is going into the cul-de-sac and going forward straight? We don't know.
Correct.
It's just normal traffic.
I just wanted you to define,
I'm not going to, I'm just explaining to you, you asked how the house down there is going to impact it. There are cars that are going to be turning that way and going in front of our house. I answered your question.
and I thought direct impact to the property. That's what my point was.
Yeah, no, there's nothing,
Okay, that's
no. They're
what I
not
took
going to
it
cut
as.
through her property to get to that cul-de-sac.
Okay, all right.
I'd like to clarify that.
Why
So,
don't you stand up, please, and
And
identify
state your
yourself.
name.
my name is Robin Wright. When they are developing houses over there, what's going on is people from the development are going back and forth up the easement and going into 106, back and forth. They're over there looking through the trees, what I'm doing over there. I've gotten up at 2 in the morning just to let my cat out, and then I hear something going on over at 106. Like, how is all this happening? It was going on-
Nobody's allowed to do construction at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, that's
No, I don't
per
think
our
they are doing
bylaws.
construction, but before somebody moved into that house, somebody must have been staying there. And so the whole summer, I would go down, I would cut trees, or I would bring brush down back. Then I would see somebody going up the easement, going to 106, and then I would hear a gun going off, for God's sakes. It was all summer when that house was being built. And so I am concerned, not really from the traffic, as Paul said, it's more the whole thing that happens while it's taking place. And that's why I wanted a fence. If I simply had a fence, then I wouldn't have brought that up.
We walked it. It's pretty heavy vegetation over there where you really can't see through.
Yes.
It must have been, okay, when were they building the house?
I don't
It was
remember.
it was last winter.
Last summer.
Yeah, last summer and last,
I even went outside to water my arborvitae trees. I have 10 of them, or 20 actually. Every time I would go out there, the developer kids or whoever they were building the house, they'd all come out and scream. Every time I went out to water a tree, I'd go back into my office, come back out and water. They'd all be screaming. This went on the whole summer, and I really don't want to experience that again. So there's got to be some kind of privacy or something on my property.
Well,
So I'm
it's-
not feeling the impact of all that stuff.
if they're yelling or something like that, that's a police issue. It's not a planning board issue or anything like that. It's
It's a civil.
It's a civil issue, and,
It's the developer's responsibility to to fix this.
Well, there'll be construction hours and I'm not sure, it'll be 7 to 3 or
I'm
so.
fine with the hours. It's what they're doing.
No Sundays, I'm pretty sure.
Right, no Sundays.
And then there's a strong connection between the 104, the 106. It goes on all day, up the easement, into 106, up and down.
You both, you got Hunter's Haven, and I believe you have a property back there for use. You know, you've got traffic as well.
Where?
What's this in the back?
I don't have any traffic going on there.
Where is your property?
It's 102. It's the whole length that runs 106.
Okay.
And so what I'm saying is by not putting a fence there, I'm subject to, when all the building is going on, for all of this activity to be going on, you know, seeing what I'm doing on my property, then as a result of them seeing this, then they go up and down the easement all day. And this is not my imagination.
So you ask him to put in temporary?
Anything.
I don't think he
Not
can put it
privacy.
temporary
Can't
because
put it,
That's
no.
right, the wetland.
it's a wetland.
Yeah, it's a
You
wetland,
can't
so, yeah.
Fool
We
around in a
discussed
wetland.
that.
Yep.
And the
Right,
houses
do
are,
nothing with the
the
wetland.
houses, if you look at the,
Because it is a wetland, you can't put anything on that.
She's already said that she's cutting trees on it herself already, so.
No, I picked up a tree, it fell down from the storm, and it broke.
Well,
it's your
She said
property.
she-
you
she
can-
said
Cut
she
it.
was
I
cutting
wasn't
trees,
cutting
so.
down the buffer. And they were all on my property.
As long as it's not in the wetlands, you can do whatever you want with them.
Exactly. I'm just correcting the record.
Okay, well, thank you.
So what can we do about some kind of a boundary issue for me? That many houses is gonna be a lot of building, and I'm not gonna put my life on hold while they have free reign of going up and down, constantly monitoring what I'm doing, literally stopping on the easement, just stopping, watching what I'm doing, taking a photo in my direction. This went on the whole summer.
Well, then call the cops then. That's all we can do.
And they say, oh, it's a civil matter. And so
Right,
I-
so it's a
So the
civil
board
matter.
can't take up a civil matter either on,
Yes.
Okay, I guess I'm just putting out my complaint.
which is fine, we can put that on record.
Yes, we can put it on the record, no problem.
Explaining the complaint that Paul was making.
But I'm sure when they build and TEC goes out on their weekly monitor, and when TEC goes out, that the engineer goes out, if there's a half inch of rain, to make sure that everything's working properly, no sediment is flowing, that's on the applicants. So I'm sure if they hear excessive noise or people screaming, and usually contractors don't scream. I mean, they're
Well,
working.
it's rather intermittent, because if you can picture that it's happening, say, even a half an hour here and there, if somebody pops in and looks, they aren't going to see or hear it.
It's not for
Ma'am,
this-
excuse me, I'm sorry to say this, but it's all about building. I mean, they have the right to build on their own property.
I have no problem
So,
with that.
that's
They
fine,
have
you
respect
know,
of my
so.
property and my privacy while they're doing it.
And I'm sure that's what they're gonna do, right?
Yes,
And if they don't,
Then you have to call the police.
call the
Doug?
police.
Mr. Chairman, through you, we're all well aware of the fact that in issuing building permits for this project, the building inspector or building commissioner is going to impose, as you will, limits on construction times. I believe your town has a noise ordinance.
Yes, we do.
We
We do
do.
not.
Are you sure?
yeah, you don't.
I am
certain
positive
that.
of that,
Well,
and that is why we
I would-
specifically place conditions within our decision, would make them enforceable, and we actually make it so that the police department is in charge
That's
of
fine.
enforcing that. So we have both a condition that states that the building commissioner can allow flexibility within based upon emergency situations of what construction might bring about, and then we have that
I
if
would,
there is a
I would
violation.
include the building inspector on it also.
We can make that a condition.
Yes.
How would that be again?
We could put that in as a condition that there wouldn't be yelling and screaming, but there'd be normal construction operation, there'd be normal trucks coming in and out, there'd be normal excavators used on the property.
So as I was saying, Mr. Chairman, that even without a bylaw, then, if the board has a condition that says there cannot be excess noise above what is, normal and
Normal
expected
construction.
for construction, your building inspector has the right to pull that building permit
Absolutely.
in 5 minutes' time. And so if there are concerns, if the neighbors have concerns that we are exceeding hours of construction or noise, I would highly suggest you call the building inspector, because they have the authority to pull the plug immediately. That's, not only is that what my clients are subject to, that's a right that every person has to work through the building inspector if there's any concerns at all.
So you have a solution with the building
Okay,
inspector.
so how does this actually look in real life? So there's a complaint. I call the building inspector.
They shut him down.
So
Well, he
it's shut
goes out
down
and
for
he-
how long? I'm just wondering how it's gonna play out.
Until
if-
they
if it
rectify
does.
the problem.
Yeah.
Typically, we have them notify the police notify the building commissioner, because again, hours of operation, when things are happening, Sam might not be in the office, you might not be
Correct.
able to get to Sam, but if you notify the police have their way to getting in touch with Sam, and then Sam would typically investigate, and depending on the situation, issue enforcement or not.
Now, do I have the right to put some kind of a boundary on my side, even if it's a very thin?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't impede on the wetland, yeah.
Yes.
You would have to see Sam, and he would, you know, you'd
Okay, so there's
probably have
no
to pull a
section-
permit for a fence.
So there's no section of the entire length that is outside of the wetland area?
Yeah, there is.
There is, absolutely.
In which section is that?
It looks, David
So
can
it's-
correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks to be in the back portion.
In the very front portion.
Yeah, lot 1 and 4 and 5.
Lot 1, 4, and 5? Well, could we agree to at least give me a little bit of that on the other side, and I will put up something on my side where it's wet?
And that's not for us to decide. It's,
Putting it out there.
Like we said, we're not, it's not us to decide.
Okay, oh, I know, I'm just putting it out there. Choose the developers.
No, that's not for them to decide
Oh,
either.
oh,
That'd
who
be
is it? I'm sorry.
Conservation.
Yes.
If they're a wetland, it's got to go through conservation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I
But-
thought there was sections it was okay to
Well,
put a fence.
on their land, so on their, there's some sections that are not wetlands.
Yes.
It looks like if you look at the one up there, you can see the actual white lines right there. So
Yes.
you're not really gonna be able to put a fence in that particular area. And again, one of the engineers can correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the first lot towards King Street and then the back
back lot.
lot have the ability to have something constructed towards the rear of the lot line, offering the most area, but then you're also getting into like the tree line, so you're gonna have to remove trees to put up a fence.
So that
in order to
defeats the
give you
purpose. So you're gonna get a 6-foot tall fence, and you're gonna lose 100 feet of tree.
And trees are on the other side of the stone wall.
Are we talking about on?
If they're on the other side of the stone wall, they
My
can't
side
even
or their
touch it,
side?
so.
I'm sorry?
Which side are we talking about? Where would the trees, it seems like,
Robin, the trees are on the other side of the stone wall, they're not on your side.
so why can't we put a fence in front of the trees? Or,
Because you can't take down the trees.
Right.
The trees are in the way.
okay, for all those things that qualify for a fence and dry, there are trees preventing.
You would have to take down some of the trees to put a fence, I believe. It's been a while since I've been out there.
Okay,
And I think that's, you know, I would take it and see how it goes. I mean, those trees are a heck of a buffer. We walked out there, you couldn't see anybody.
well,
And I don't think you could put a fence in your yard, Robin, because there's no permanent structures in the easement.
It's not all in the easement.
well, it's a
it's
boundary,
not.
but that's another issue. Paul?
Well,
The easement's only 25 feet from the center of the drive.
well, they could agree, the two of them could agree to put a permanent structure there. Would just, her and Mr. Fury would have to agree.
That's not us.
Yeah, they would have to agree to that.
Oh, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the beginning of King Street.
No, they're talking about, because of the tree line, the only place you could put a fence is in the easement, like not the pavement. It would be on the dirt area of the easement along his buffer, along his
They couldn't
line.
do it on the lot during construction because they're gonna be excavating the lot, and that would compromise the fence.
Yes.
So it would have to be in the trees where they couldn't touch, and you can't touch the trees and put the fence there, so it kind of defeats the purpose. So when they work on a lot, they're gonna have to excavate. The fence will be destroyed. They cannot put the fence in until there's a finished piece of property. You follow what I'm saying?
I do. I really don't know what the solution is.
I don't either, so
All I'm
Doug,
saying is I'm not willing to experience what I did last summer. It's not.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, we have heard our neighbor's request for a fence. And I assume what she's talking about is along this property line.
Correct.
We have discussed this with the board. Our position was that there is a significant amount of tree, both on our property here and on Ms. Wright's property, on the other side of the property line. At the site visit, we pointed out that we believe this provided quite a significant buffer, and that we have respectfully declined to put a fence along here. We're not gonna do it. And I just don't understand. I have to go back to the statement that while Ms. Wright wants a buffer here for privacy, why is it she's now cutting those trees?
I don't want to cut the trees.
Those trees
I
have
like
been...
trees. We took down a broken tree and we took the bittersweet vines down that were hanging from the trees.
Oh, are you talking about that I cleared land? No.
Through the
I
chair,
picked
Mr.
that.
Chairman, we've heard the question. We are not proposing to provide a fence as part of our application. We believe that we have met our obligations to provide privacy to our neighbors through the existing tree line and agreement not to cut those trees. We're not touching those trees.
And we've been out there, and it is a great buffer.
Absolutely.
I hear you. I just know from.
I don't see where they can put a fence in.
I
mean,
wouldn't believe what happened could have happened, but it did. I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't have that experience.
And did you put a complaint into Sam?
I don't know if it was just Sam. I think I maybe talked to Rebecca. I'm not sure. There were so many other issues that were going on last year, not related to 106, that I was a little overwhelmed by them, actually, and I'm just now addressing them in some way. So no, there were just so many issues with the two properties.
My suggestion in the future would be during construction, if you have an issue with what's going on, then you would have to
Well, I
talk to the
think
proper authorities.
I did not have the correct camera system to really prove what was going on, and that's why I didn't. Yeah,
And I don't know,
that's it.
I don't know what the law is on, like, putting cameras up
No, on
to
my
see what's
property.
going on their
No,
property. I
I'm not
don't,
doing that.
okay.
No. It's over my trees. It was to show the pattern of 104 using the easement for 106, and it,
Well, they're not going to use that. They can't use the easement. We're not going to allow it. It's going to be part of the order of conditions. And I hope that satisfies, I know you're not going to get, I know the applicants are not going to put a fence. I don't see where they can put a
And
fence.
we'll provide the number for that gentleman for the complaint through the police. Police guys.
Sam, Johnson,
Yeah.
Let's not beat a dead horse. Let's
Okay,
move the
so,
question.
anything else, Paul?
The only thing I can maybe think of that might give her some peace of mind, if we could have some signage by the easement that says no construction vehicles. If we can make that a condition, I think that's reasonable.
well, that's
Where do
easy.
you want that sign?
Somewhere over here.
Can you point to the
He
board?
just wants to make sure there's no.
Paul, can we
trucks coming.
have you come to the board and,
Oh,
Grab your mic.
So somewhere over here, it's just so construction vehicles. Oh, sorry, out here. Just
Yeah.
put some kind of sign, say no construction vehicles, so trucks aren't gonna like back in there like concrete trucks.
oh, that's not going on. No, that's fine.
She doesn't want it.
I will put a sign on my property saying that issue is not happening that you're describing. Sorry.
okay, well,
Yeah, there you go. Yep,
well, thank you.
okay. Thank you.
All set.
All right.
But it's covered, so.
Anyone else? We good?
Yep, we're good, thank you.
Thank you. Doug? You guys all set?
Yes, sir.
All right, so what I think we would do is we have put forth a motion
To continue.
to continue, actually have Rebecca draw up
For decision.
a decision for our next meeting with all the order of conditions and and we'll have everything. Dave only needs, what do you need, one more calculation, or we're good? Calculations to match each other?
The pipe size.
Another,
Yeah, so the pipe sizing, the plan just need to show the proper cover over the pipes.
That's it.
And provide the updated operations and maintenance plan, and I believe everything else would be.
Yeah, updated operations, just.
Mr. Chairman, we can get you the O&M plan and the revised plan prior to your next meeting.
That's fine.
Perfect.
Great.
Rebecca, anything to add?
You need anything?
Could I say something?
T,
Sure.
Could you go ahead and put that sign, as Paul suggested?
I don't think it would be problematic.
I
I think that's a really easy,
no construction vehicles beyond this point.
That's fine.
To do with 106.
Correct.
yes.
We'll
Correct.
do that.
Paul, is that?
I'll talk with Paul. I'll talk to Paul,
Uh,
come to an agreement on the sign. Obviously, his client is gonna have to give us permission to put that sign in. because
Absolutely.
that
She's
is
gonna have to
not
give you
part of
written
our-
permission
Yeah,
also.
written permission.
Not of our, part of our subdivision, and I do understand, although I'm not involved with the questions revolving around the easement itself, but I don't believe, I think there's a prohibition against any kind of permanent structures being put in that. So we
The
will need
signage
to
can only be, will they make it a temporary sign?
work with you on the sign
why
itself.
can't we just put it on their property and not their property?
Huh?
Why, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Doug, why can't we just put it on
Why don't we put it on their
106?
Right in the corner.
Yeah,
Right
we
in
want
the
to put it on
corner
their
and not
property.
go
We
on
don't-
her property?
We
Yes.
don't want to put it on any other
Happy to
property.
do that.
Yes.
Again, I'll still,
How about if we just direct the construction vehicles to our road, to our.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Make sure they just don't turn down the wrong piece of property.
That's all.
we'll
Yep.
do that.
That's not to say hopefully a truck driver
Yeah,
doesn't make a
but I
mistake,
mean, there's always mistakes.
You know,
I mean, I built a
honest mistakes.
$100 million
not
school right
malicious
now.
mistakes.
There's a lot of mistakes, so.
I think if there's a sign, though, that says construction vehicles for 106 must enter here,
Yeah.
I think that'll help cut down on the mistakes.
Oh, it will help, definitely, absolutely. So,
We will do that.
Does any members of the planning board have anything to add? John, Bob?
Oh, good.
Jim?
This was very productive.
So I think we'll put a motion in
to
to
continue,
continue and have
Rebecca draw up a draft?
a draft for next meeting,
Yes.
September 7th, I believe.
Yes.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I guess this will,
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I was conversing with my brother here. So that you've continued the hearing,
September
It's
7th,
and
Second.
you're gonna draft the thing? Will you vote on the waivers at that point?
I believe, yes, we will.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. There's one more item up,
Yeah.
so we'll close,
Yeah, we have a,
close the public.
No, you're good. You just continue.
okay.
Okay. All right. A correspondent email relative to 245 Center Street, 142 King Street.
So,
So,
Mr.
Rebecca.
Chair, I don't really think it's necessary to get into any of the details concerning it. You do have a copy of the correspondence. You can see what the correspondence says. So I would just like to respectfully ask that the board make a formal vote to allow for Sam Joslin, the building commissioner, to be the planning board enforcement agent for the property at 242, 142 King Street until the sale of the property has been finalized.
We'll make a motion for Sam to, Sam will handle 245 King Street until the sale goes through, and the new owners will correspond with Rebecca when that happens. Are we, can I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Mike, you want these?
And then the only other
Nice plan.
item that I have under the director update is just to let you know that Town Hall is closed on September 6th in observance of Labor Day. So most likely, the Board of Selectmen meetings are held the same weeks as our meetings, so they meet typically in this room. So if the holiday falls on a Monday, they typically push their meetings over to Tuesday, which would mean that they would be in this room. So we would need to either
Go to that
be in
room.
the back hall conference room or the police and fire conference room over in the other building like we were the other week. So I just wanted to let you all know that there might be a location change for the September 7th meeting based upon the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Very good.
All right. So, motion, we have anything else?
No.
I would like to motion to close the meeting at 8:58 PM.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good, we're off?
Oh, thank you.